Hello everybody. Today we are changing out the brakes. It's a rainy day today, so unfortunately not gonna try and go right today, but figured try and get some work done. So I'm gonna be swapping out the brakes for the front and the rear. Now these front brakes I have already swapped out. However, they are organic brakes, and so if you don't know about brakes, there are a couple of different kinds. There's organic, there's hybrid, and then there's sintered brakes. These sintered brakes are the ones that give you the most bite and the most amount of stopping power, whereas the organics are much more softer and smoother. And they're made out of different materials. And so I tried swapping these front brakes out for organic ones. They were due for being swapped out anyway, and I don't really like how soft they are. So I did end up getting more sintered brakes. So these are going to be for the front, these are going to be for the rear. So today we're just going to be swapping those out. So to swap out the brakes, for my version of the Scout, this is the ABS version, so it's going to have this little screw down here as well. You're going to need to take off these 3 bolts. And so let's take off the main 2. This is going to be a 5/16 hex bolt. There we go. And to swap out your brakes, it's pretty straightforward. All you are going to really need are obviously the brake pads and some brake cleaner, just to clean everything up. Now that that's loose, let's take that off. There you go. And to check the lifespan of your brake pads, you're just gonna look right down here. You can see this little indicator. If you can't see this anymore, then you definitely need to change your brake pads. But while it's on, you can just take a flashlight and take a look in here. But you can see how dirty these are. Now that the brake line is off, just again, really make sure that you don't hit the brake pedal, because that's gonna push everything in and it might mess you up. Then you're just gonna take off these retaining clips. And then you're also gonna see there's these little brackets that may or may not pop out at you. So just be cognizant of that. It's also probably a good idea to be wearing gloves as you can clearly see, our hands are getting very dirty. All right, so to take off this clip, just get yourself some pliers. All right, and to take off this clip, it's pretty straightforward. Just grab it, pull it, don't lose it. Let's go grab that. Luckily, we saw exactly where it went. Okay, this will pop out. Then you can simply pull out your brake pads. And so again, these are the organics. Not too big of a fan. You can see how these clips are hanging in there. Again, here's your pistons, and you can simply just push these back in. It does take some force, but you can push these back in, and you can clean. You can clean these all off. And I probably should have. You probably should clean it off before you push the pistons back in. Just see all that gunk coming right off. This is also where wearing gloves is a good idea. And from what I remember, I definitely do not remember the brakes being this dirty last time. So I guess with organics, you can also expect to have a lot more material break off as well. Let's wipe down the... And then just push that back in. When you push these pistons back in, On mine there's 2. Different types of brakes, you may have different number of pistons. Some have 4, these have 2. But when you push them back in, the other piston may also push out. Okay, push that back in as far as you can. Again, very important, do not pull in the brake while everything is out. Let's go ahead and open up our brake line, our new brake pads. Put our bracket back in. We can place our first one here. I don't know how necessary it is to apply grease. This is brake grease. I don't know how necessary it is to apply it, but I have it, so we'll do it a bit more. Okay. And then put our bolt back in. Then we get our little clasp and pop that back in. So when you're putting everything back in, just make sure everything's straight. Once you get everything back in, go ahead and tighten it back up. And so you are going to want to tighten it down to this amount. So I'm gonna go look it up and go ahead and tighten all this down after I finish up the rear. So that's the front. So it's pretty straightforward. So now that you have the brakes on, what you're going to want to do is push the brake. Now you can push the brake lever down. And you notice when you first push it down, you're not gonna really get any resistance at all. So the first time, just keep pumping it, keep pumping it. So you basically gotta get those pistons back into place. You can see now it's getting more and more and more resistance. Just keep pumping it. And then once you feel like you can actually feel how it should, you can see now it's getting quite a bit of resistance. Now you're good to go. So very easy to change your own brake pads on the Indian Scout at least. Take off these 2 bolts, pull them out, undo that 1 bolt down here, take it out, take off the clasp, clean off everything, slide in your new brake pads, and you're done. All right, now to do the rear. This one is a bit more difficult just because you have the exhaust in the way. But you're going to need to get these 2 bolts off. And these are size 15. There we go. There's 1, and there's 2. So instead of trying to get this screw off, what we're going to do is cut these zip ties, and then maybe we can just get away with looping this around. So let's be very careful not to actually cut any. So now we should have enough access to be able to get everything. How are these brakes looking? So, just as before, so same thing as before. Go ahead and take off this clip. Don't have it go fly off, if at all possible. These are pretty, this one's pretty stiff. See how much gunk is in the threads. And then with that, you can pull out the brake pads. See, this housing only has a single piston. And these, I think, are... I actually can't, I don't see any line. Maybe with the rear, I guess with the rear pads, you just look at the overall pad itself. You don't look at the, you don't necessarily look at just, there's, I don't know if there's any indicator, but you can see there's a percentage more. So I'd say maybe these are about 30% down. But yeah, from what I can tell, maybe even less than that. So there's still plenty of life in these actually. So I think what I'm gonna do is just keep these on there for now. There's no point in swapping them out unnecessarily. I will go ahead and clean these up because these are the same type of brake. These are also the sintered. You do get sintered brakes stock. So I'm gonna keep these on there. There's no point in changing them out. But I will take this as an opportunity to clean out everything. You can see there's a bracket here, there's a bracket back here, and then there are also two brackets on the back of these. I'm currently at about 8,000 miles on my Scout, and whenever I do brake, I typically will use both brakes as instructed during the MSF course. So I won't only use the front brake, or I won't only use the rear brake unless I'm like trail braking or something, like in a turn. But if I'm just trying to come to a stop, I will use both brakes, which I guess makes sense. If only 30% of your stopping power comes from the rear, then it does make sense that they would wear down slower. But I always attributed that more to the size of the brake pads and everything else, not just the fact that they won't wear down as fast as well. So, but the process is going to be the same, so we'll push this back in as if we were getting new brakes and all that. Okay, well, we'll put these back in. Okay, all right, so then all that's left is to put everything back together and put more zip ties on there. So tighten these down. All right, well, that's the basic process for how to change your brakes on a Indian Scout. The rear is definitely a little bit more difficult than the front, just because of the placement and everything, but the process itself is still very straightforward. As always, be safe, be brave, do good, take care of yourselves. I'll see y'all in the next one.